Why the arc?
Yeah, why the arc? Well, I think that's for everyone to imagine for themselves, but for me, I believe it's just it's a stay against grief. And as he says, Ernie is not a man with great, a complicated inner life, really. And for him, when he says maybe a man just has to do something with his hands, maybe that's all there is to it. But I believe that what he's doing is staving off grief by doing this huge project. Yay!
Daniel Noel.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't.
We were just talking about. The question was, why is Ernie building the Ark? What do you think?
Okay. My thing is that I think I answered it. Maybe a guy's just got to do something with his hands. He's got a sick wife that he's taking care of. I watched my father take care of my mom when she was getting older and dying, and I think you want to keep busy. You want to do something, especially if you're on strike and not working. So I think it's that combination of just busy work and I don't know, there might be something more to it. It's an escape in a lot of ways. It's like living.
Great. And we've been joined by Lisa and Peter and Moira and Tom. No other questions? Yes, up and back.
I just have a question. I just wonder how many people right now in the audience live in or have lived in a paper mill town.
Wow. Monica, can you talk a moment about growing up in a paper mill town?
Oh gosh. Well, when I grew up in my paper mill town of Mexico, Maine, it was really a company town back then. The mill was really the major employer in town, and even if your family weren't directly connected to the mill, they were indirectly connected. So all the merchants and the insurance people and the teachers, and there were tons of school children. We had to build a new high school. It was just a big, booming town where people could make a really good living. And to see it today is heartbreaking. The mill is a shadow of its former self. And that's the story of American manufacturing, not just in Maine, but all through the country. And people have told me in response to this and also to my memoir that came out a couple of years ago that they relate because they live in a place just like that, even though it's not Maine, it's in Illinois or Georgia or Minnesota or someplace else. So it's the story of the decline of the middle class that coincides with the decline of the manufacturing base in America. And I think it's a story that resonates with a lot of people right now. And even though it's set in 1989, it could be happening now with everything that's been going on with Bucksport and other places in Maine. So it's just my luck that I have such a wonderful cast to help dramatize that story. And I don't know what it's like for you guys to have a script like that where it does kind of seesaw among things. You want to take that, Moira?
Sure, I'll start. It's fantastic to have a script that does that. It's a delight, and life is like that. In the darkest moments, something funny happens, and it's not to break the tension necessarily, but that's just the ebb and flow of human feeling and sorrow and hilarity and darkness and light is what I love to explore as an actor. And Monica's just written a beautiful script that takes us everywhere, the politics, the humanity, the families, the bitterness, the fierceness, the self-doubt, and then all of this humor. It's just completely fun to play and fun to listen backstage, and like all these laughs that are happening in some place that you wouldn't expect it, but she's not afraid to put it in there, and we're not afraid to go for it.
The question was, how did they connect to their particular characters?
I'm in a particular stage in my own life where I have the luxury of being selfish. And that's something that Jake does not have, and yet he's faced with that selfishness, ultimately. You know, I always thought I described Jake as a man apart. But he's not a man. He's still so young. I mean, he's 21, 22 years old. He's just a kid, and he's been thrown into this position, and he has to compromise. And I know about compromise, and I know that in my mind when I play Jake, I turn up when my parents start talking about all the ghosts of these people behind me who paved the way for what I have. I can't hear it. I can't listen to it, you know, because then I wouldn't do what he does, you know. So he is faced with this thing that he has to care for his family. He's this little baby. It's all that matters to him is this baby. He has to give up everything. And at the end, his father can barely even look at him. You know, I've said before that I think that characters never really get what they want. And if they do, then the actor's doing something wrong. Ever. And so maybe, you know, I imagine the afterlife of this guy, and maybe he does, you know, he can support his child and support his wife, but at what cost? I think that in order to do what I needed to do, I had to turn off that costly part, you know? I couldn't hear it.
And Nancy had to turn off, well, to be an ethical nurse. That meant a lot to me. And we went through it. And Monica has nursing experience, and I worked with a wonderful nurse named Janice Childs, and head wounds do bleed like crazy, and he didn't require stitches. And that line is really important to me. He doesn't require stitches. For me, the actor playing Nancy, that's true. I'm not messing around. So I know that he's going to be fine. And he has destroyed my life. He's destroyed my life. What has happened with Jerry, who's never on stage, is deep and it's bad for me. That's the work I do. And I don't write it down or anything, but it's like, you know, there's a full life in that family of the Laternos, and it's not going well. So that motivates that behavior that you see, Nancy, towards Henry McCoy. And then I love how it goes into a place where they're arguing. Jerry's screwing it all up. He's messing up, but I can argue with McCoy. You know, allow me a doubt. It'll make you look like an idiot. Oh, you want to stay off the record, you know, all that stuff. So we get to have the argument, which is great. It's not just this strangely kind of, I don't consider it sadistic, but really difficult thing that you're all watching of a nurse who's not treating a patient. And then I love that he has to get cleaned up, Tom, the actor, and that's how we do it in the half light, so that Nancy, you can see in the half light that Nancy is tending to him finally. So
I think that, sorry, just one more thing, that you know, you just have to be right. He's, in his mind, he's right. And I'm a stubborn person. And I understand what it means to be right when I'm wrong.
I don't know what
Yes,
you're
right
talking
in
about.
here.
Peter, what are you talking about?
I'm really impressed with the amount of emotions that you people had to go through in this play. More so than a lot of the plays we see. You just, it was incredible to me, especially at the end. And my question to you is, is this a play that has made you more exhausted than you normally are in the play?
You guys go.
I'd be glad to, yeah.
Coming off the past 3 or 4, I would have to say no, because they were challenging prior to this. But it costs. I would say it costs. It always costs. I am not a kind of an actor who just comes in and shows up. I mean, maybe there's probably actors who are way better than me who can just walk on stage and just do it. But for me, there's always a little bit of cost, and hopefully it's worth it in the end. But it's not a walk in the park. No play ever has been a walk in the park for me, though. So That's how I feel about every single time I stand backstage and ready to go on. What on earth is anyone doing this for? There are so many other occupations. I'm serious, actually.
Yeah, it's a funny, emotionally it is, this is the most challenging role I think I've ever had in my entire life, in 40 years of theater. And I think it's because it's just not me. We were saying the other day that it's sort of I'm the kind of guy that if I hear that a rabbit got hurt in New Jersey, it shows on my face, you know? So I had to, you know, shut that off, you know? So it's not, but to be able to do the range of emotions and also just working with this incredible cast and incredible script, I just, it's amazing. I am loving it. I'm loving every single second of it. But I'm pooped.
So we're going to go to Tom, too, over here.
It's an interesting question, and you can tell that everybody has different ways of working, and just like athletes or musicians, anything. For me, the play is deceivingly classical. It is a word play, and with all the emotion that goes on to it, which is the message that everybody takes home, it needs to be performed precisely, and that's what is tiring. It's not actually tiring; it's invigorating, but it's something that I have to prepare for. I can't eat dinner beforehand, things like that, because if you lose the precision, you lose this incredibly intricate construction of narrative that Monica has put together with sometimes a turn of a phrase will turn the narrative, move it forward. By the way, the thing about the humor is not just relief. It's the relief that increases the tension. So it has to be handled precisely. And and that's good comedy writing. Bad comedy writing would just put in somebody drops his pants and everybody laughs, and then it's over. The laughs here accumulate. So I can't say it's tiring, but what really takes close attention is the precision in this play.
And you guys do it so beautiful.
Yeah, it's a good compliment.
A responsibility for being the first to create these characters. Do you have one?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just delightful to work with a playwright. Monica is wonderful. Sally Wood, our director, is just incredible. I've had the luck in my life to work with quite a few playwrights, new playwrights, and had a few, I think 4 or 5 times that I've actually created a role. And it's special. It will always be special. It's like, wow, I got to be the first person that, you know, said these words and worked with the playwright on these words, and she works so beautifully with everybody, so openly and generously. Like, you know, it's really terrific. But yeah, it's a very cool thing.
I'm sure John Goodman will be great in the movie, but I made it. I said that out loud.
So yes, up and back.
I want to say one thing, though, about the creating of the characters. For me, as the playwright, if this is done, you know, how many more times with many different casts, this will always be my cast. You know, I can't even imagine anybody else.
And we've been doing early show performances for high school students. There were 2 last week, yes, and another
2 this
couple,
week,
2 week this week. So we're having students come in to see it.
And they're really responding.
I think it's finished. I may do a little bit of, after the run, I'll go back and polish it up a little bit, but I think this is the script, yeah. I do. I worked really hard on it with these guys. The truth is that when I was a child, growing up, it wasn't the corporate structure that it is now. When I was 9, my father died very suddenly on his way to work at the Oxford Paper Company one morning, and that evening the mill manager came to our house. So it was a very different kind of hierarchy back then. And there wasn't the huge disparity in what a CEO or board of directors makes compared to the rank and file. You know, those things have changed so dramatically since I was a child that it's hard to even make the comparison right now. So I think maybe the idea, though, of the CEO and somebody like Ernie facing each other, may have come from that. It was a very, very memorable moment in my life. And I remember thinking that I thought my father was the most important person in the mill until the mill manager came over. So it was my first lesson in sort of hierarchy, social class kind of thing. It was a stunning moment in my childhood that I will never forget. So it's possible that's the reason this play exists. I don't know. You never know where you pick up your little pieces to put into something. I wrote the lines, but it was mostly, I think, sometimes it was, can I say this instead of that? And then I would rewrite the thing that they asked me to say, so it felt more right for them in their moment. So there were a lot of little moments like that, I mean, hundreds of little moments like that. But more it was when we were all together as a cast and director and playwright, just talking about trying to clarify every single moment in the play, clarifying the argument people were making, clarifying the emotion that was happening at the time. And it does all come down to the words. It's the only thing you have to express these things is the dialogue. And Tom and I worked together very hard on that opening monologue. It took us a while. And Peter and I worked on a moment. This was the day before opening night. Thank you very much. And there was one moment in the second act where Jake he's trying to explain why he's doing this, and he added the line, "It's time to settle. Somebody has to break this thing." And there was something about that clarified the moment for me, and I think for him, thinking that he's...
Wait, you wrote it?
I did write it. No, I didn't write it.
Yeah, you're making it sound like you wrote it.
But it was but we were talking about that moment and I supplied the words, but they supplied the really important questions, and I'm just really grateful to all of them for helping me do that.
There was never a moment when the words that ended up on the paper weren't hers. And that's, I've done endless new plays, and that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Yes, you think the hierarchy says you defer to the playwright, but this particular playwright, if there's something you're discussing that is a difference of opinion about clarifying a moment, you go away for sometimes 5 minutes and come back with the correct words. So we always defer to those words. In the first week, we learned that was a reflex.
There was the day when her husband, the wonderful Dan Abbott, came in, like the second week or maybe it was the first week, with her printer and put it on the table. The rehearsal room was coffee cups and Purell and scripts and highlighters and everything, and so that she was banging out, these changes, and they were precise, small, and major changes. A few words. I mean, that's the amazing genius of her. It's like, wow.
Yes, I'm a genius.
Just that. But then she said, "This is great." She's so humble and modest. But there was
I'm
one
also
time
humble and modest.
when she moved her laptop to the other side of the room, and she said something like, "Okay, this isn't helpful now," with us all talking about everything and saying, "But what about this?" She's saying, "Okay, this isn't helpful now." So she goes over by the window, and she's banging away, and we're just all rehearsing and doing our thing, and then you hear her say, "Oh, I'm a genius." So cute.
I remember that.
Did the visit to Rumford add to any depth in your characters?
Oh, my. Oh, yes. From my character's point of view, that's nothing that I know. I don't know anything about this character's way of life. That's all comes from somewhere. But when we go out there, realize that this enormous, the thing I came back with, two things. Scale was the main thing. You can't understand the scale when you're talking about it until you're in the frickin' building. And you see these enormous machines that I'm now imagining I'm in charge of, and surrounded by the smell. The machine, the scale of the operation and the smell was something that was really, really powerful. Made a huge impression on me.
For me as well, as had a very. I'm sorry. Who asked the question? Where are you sitting? Hi. It had a huge impact on me. First, we went to Monica's sister's home, and they made us lunch. And the story. I mean, this is really, to me, a story about my family, about the Donahues. And in spite of everything, how this family is really thriving, is a beautiful family, I think. And that's what we saw in Monica's family as well. That's true. Hey. And then going to the mill itself, just to piggyback on what Tom was saying, that, I have a line, I hate the heat and the stink and the noise. And you get there, and all of a sudden you're wearing all of that, and it's heavy. And you leave, and I think to myself, when Jake leaves, it stays with him. And it weighs on him and weighs on him, and to the point where he does hate it, but it's all that he wants.
But my family is, for the most part, factory workers, rubber mills, was half a block from my home growing up. My grandma worked there, my great aunts and uncles, and my dad became a fireman, and then railroad workers all around in my family. But the warehouse, just being in that factory was a completely different experience. But the guys were the same. It's like that working class. My dad's favorite line is about a person is, he's a damn hard worker. And you know what that means. It's like, it's not like all in the head. It's that guy works, is not afraid of physical labor, and does it. And so it really hit me. I felt like I had to respect who these guys were,
The other thing that the actors pointed out to me after we got back was how impressed they were with the pride of product.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something that I really wanted to get into the play from everybody, not just the workers, but the guy who's running the whole shebang, that pride of making a beautiful, beautiful product. And that was something that they also noticed when they went to the mill. I love Henry. He's one of my favorite characters I've ever created. Partly because he's so different from me. If we were in a room talking politics, it would get ugly, I'm sure. But I have to believe that all my characters are trying to do good in the world, somehow. They may be misguided, they may be wrong, but they're all trying as hard as they can to do the right thing. And the thing that makes humanity so frustrating and beautiful is that the right thing changes from soul to soul. And all these people are just trying to do the best they can in a really tough situation, including Henry, who seems to have everything, but he also has this troublesome relationship with his daughter, and in the end, the knowledge of the kind of suffering he will never experience because of who he is. Henry breaks my heart, honestly.
Could I say something about that also? It's interesting, in light of other questions about collaborating, is that we all, the three that are responsible for Henry and the writing, the director and Monica and I, there was an understanding early on that without support of sentiment from him, of the positive sentiment from him, it would be one-sided. And all through this period, with a change of a word or the strengthening of a talented pack of papermakers and repeating it, that was part of this collaboration in a big way. So that always Henry, it was very satisfying to have new additions to say that this is a human being under there. It was really, really exciting collaboration.
So why did I have Marie dying of pancreatic cancer is the question. Sometimes characters come dying, or they come having just won the lottery, or they come in a certain way, and that's Marie. The first time I ever thought of Marie, that's who she was. And sometimes these things happen subconsciously, and I think Marie is the glue. She's the one that is going to be her most decent self, no matter what is happening around her. And the fact that she is dying adds some urgency to that. We were talking one day during rehearsal about just how we were going to play a couple of scenes, and Sally Wood, no relation to me, who's a fabulous director, was saying to you, Lisa, that you are dying and you want all of this to be buttoned up before you go. And it gave that certain urgency to that family problem that they're having. She wants to make sure her son and her husband and her granddaughter and daughter-in-law are going to be okay before she goes. So, it adds a certain urgency when you know your time is limited. Well, those of you who have read Ernie's Arc and just saw the play today know how very different the play is from the book, which happens frequently. You might, and you start with an idea and it just becomes a whole other thing, and that's what happened with this. So the idea of this guy building an ark, his wife is dying, they're out on strike, that is directly from the book. And the part of Henry and his daughter taking this road trip is directly from the book, and everything else just kind of, that was just kind of the launching place for the rest of the book. As far as the process of writing it, it was actually a really fun technical problem for me. I love solving problems when I'm writing, and it was a really big problem to have nothing but dialogue to tell a story. I had no other way to implicate a character's inner life or inner turmoil or anything. It was just the dialogue. I've always wanted to write a play. I love the theater. It's been something that I've thought about for years, but never, my writing path just didn't take me there. And I was on tour for a book, and it kind of went on and on. And so I was expected to be writing another novel, but I didn't have that kind of time. And so I had these dribs and drabs of time, which were perfect for writing dialogue, just writing little scenes and things. And so I had that idea, and then one day I was off the road, and I asked Moira to come over. And I said, Moira, I have a few pages of this thing that I think might be a play, and can you just come and run the lines with me? So she came over, and we were sitting on my little red couch.
Sofa.
And there we are, and we read probably half a page, and I said, okay, that's enough. I knew right away it was just I'd started in the wrong place, and I had 800 stage directions, and Moira was very kind and diplomatic. And
That wasn't hard.
No, and gave me a few little tips, and then I thought, oh, okay, so start here instead of there. And it was really the same kind of thing I would tell a student writing a short story, honestly. But, you never know when it's you. You just, So I wrote all that next day, and I emailed you the first scene. And then she calls me up, and I saved this voicemail message for ages. And she said, how did you learn how to write a play overnight? So
It was true.
yeah, so
It's true. It was incredible.
Yeah, so Moira and Daniel actually have been pestering me for years to write a play. In fact, this play is dedicated to the two of them. So, yeah.
So one last question, so make it a good one. Yes, up here.
I don't know if it's a question. Halfway through it, I realized that you're following in the footsteps of the Pajama King. I was wondering, when are you guys going to then turn it into a musical?
Never is the answer to that.
Great. Thank you all very much. Great discussion.